became, I'd say, rather prominent in the cable industry in the sense that I remember one of the first things I read in a cable magazine was an article that you had written and talking about how cable companies needed to be more involved in the content business itself. And
yeah, I was a proponent of that. Probably should have followed it too, because look what happened to Malone. I mean, he got a he's probably one of the world's wealthiest men, but mostly because of content. And I was also highly critical of when they went to satellites that they didn't have a backup plan. And I likened it to, I said, you know, you're going to have your own cable television 3 Mile Island. I also wrote a lot of articles on behalf of Synanon, helping them raise money, and not so much money, but getting donations and things for their properties to build cable plant. Met some heads. That was interesting. I spent some time there. I had developed lifelong friendships with a couple of people like Rudy Stefano, who I still contact with. And of course, Synanon's no longer in existence, but for a lot of nefarious reasons, really, and they were nefarious. But and Dan Sorkin, the famous San Francisco DJ, who just died this year from in his late 80s. He was still flying, giving lessons in his 80s, but a real humorous guy, very humorous. And he's the guy that discovered Bob Newhart.
Wow.
Yeah. But anyway, we did a lot of products. Probably had sales of I don't remember really, $1.5 million, $2 million, or something like that. But and at the time, I had a lot of shareholder discontent as well. Vince had left in a huff, and so we had I'd arranged for Drew to buy his shares, Drew Lance, and that was a good move. Of course, Drew was a lifelong friend, and Phil still had his shares. Peter and his brother and father sold out to a fellow by the name of Richard Slocum and his wife, who weren't good shareholders to have. And I mean, if everybody else wanted A, they wanted B. And then when they got divorced, they wanted B and C. And of course, then we had PHRED, Fred.
Oh, Fred was a shareholder?
Oh, yeah. I had given him shares. Fred was an old accountant. I'd met him at AirTech. Very, very good at determining very quickly where you stood. Cantankerous. The older he got, the worse he got. He became just impossible. He was just impossible. Him and his wife both. And so that's all we did was argue. You know, one day the Slocums wanted to liquidate because they were getting a divorce. Another time somebody else wanted to declare a dividend because with the extra cash. And, you know, Drew and Phil wanted it to grow. Just keep going. And Drew was no longer at California Microwaves. So, he gave me a hand. Anytime I ever wanted it, he gave me a hand. So between the three of us, we had enough shares to basically do whatever we wanted. So, believe it or not, this guy Slocum recommended that, you know, if we found a potential buyer, that we should get in touch with this guy, Dick Slocum. Dan Sully, and have him broker the deal for us. Dan was a local businessman. He had run a company. So there was a company called More Controls or something like that in Palo Alto. Fairly good-sized company until they moved out of the area. But Dan was a good business guy. He really was, and so we had an original offer from, and what prompted it was we had an original offer from Cal Eastern Labs, Al White, Carl Peterson. We had used their first transistors at Airtech, the very first. We bought them out of his briefcase. But that ended up on the scrap heap. Nobody was, everybody was arguing about it, and I really wasn't that keen on it anyway. But I wanted to get out. So along came a phone call to, I placed a phone call to Frank Ginocchio, probably the world's finest gentleman, and who was the president of Catel. They had recently been bought by a company by the name of United Scientific, and which was owned by a company by the name of Data Design Laboratories out of Cucamonga. And I told them what would the shareholders would like to do is sell it. And so I went up and talked to him, and we talked a little bit, and then about a month later I got a call, and he asked me to come up and meet the chairman of Data Design. So we sat down, and he said that they had decided that they could use our capability and like to buy the company. Well, so I called the board of directors, and nobody could agree other than Phil, Drew, agreed with what I wanted to do, and so we got Sully involved, and he put the deal together for us, and it worked out quite well. I mean, as far as it happened in a hurry, it was not a lot of lawyers required in those days, even though they were a public company. Mm-hmm. They were traded. They didn't get to the New York Exchange until after we were purchased, but they became a New York Exchange company. And it was done with shares. It wasn't done with money. The Slocums weren't happy. Fred wasn't happy because they didn't get enough. So I'll never forget this. Never forget it. Dan Sully went down to Cucamonga, met with Tom Bisecker, walked away with an extra $250,000 on top of the in stock. And Drew and Phil and I suggested to the board that we give Dan a bonus of $25,000 for that, on top of what he was getting paid. These other guys, oh no, he was just doing what you paid him for. So anyway, interesting.
So did the board? He didn't get the bonus in?
The three of us made sure that he did. Yeah, but they didn't. They didn't have to. They didn't contribute. It's not untypical, I guess. It's one of the things that my wife and I, from that lesson, if we ever started another company, there was never going to be another owner, another shareholder. Mm-hmm. And there never has been. So when we did start this company, we started it on our own with $25,000.
$25,000, it's a recurring theme.